Hello, and welcome to this episode of Pathway to Profit with me, Greg, and the other Greg. Today we're going to be looking into the mini budget that was announced recently in the UK and giving our thoughts on what it means. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, busy day. How about yourself?
Yeah, busy as well, but can't complain.
Good.
So obviously the budget was announced recently. I guess the first kind of thing to start with is, what did you think of it? What was your initial thoughts?
It's hard. I always find that I've had a few people ask me that question. It's really hard. I find that hard to answer, right? Because on the one hand, you're an accountant, so you're answering it as an accountant. If anybody's a business owner, they answer it because they're a business owner. Obviously, I'm a homeowner, and investor. So I think different people have a different response based on where they are. From an accounting point of view, I'd say that, look, it appears to me that taxes went down, all the indicators went in the right way, but obviously it's getting mixed reviews in the press.
Yeah, I thought it was, to be honest, I was a little confused by it, if I'm honest, because the mini budget was announced in relation to primarily the cost of living crisis. And what they announced in it doesn't really seem to help as much the people you would expect them to be aiming towards, in my opinion, anyway.
I think that's a good perspective. I mean, I think the reaction that we've seen from some quarters, most noticeably recently, the IMF, which criticizes it, and I have a quote from them, which is quite interesting a little later. But I think their whole point was that it's driving an inequality. Another approach maybe could have been to just simply increase the lower earnings rate, which would have made it, kind of more universally across the board. But yeah, I mean, I do tend to agree with you, that there was some contradiction, shall I say, I guess, in what they said in their statement, and so on. I'd agree.
I suppose they would argue they're also looking into the natural gas and changing all that around. So they would argue that would also help with the cost of living, maybe. That may be their answer to it. I don't know. But that was when I first looked at it, I was a bit surprised as to everything seemed to be leaned towards a higher end of the spectrum, whereas the mini budget was announced at this abnormal time because of people at the lower.
I'm not really sure that I'd agree with that, if I'm honest, because when you look at what's happened, in terms of the reversal of national insurance, for example, better corporation tax, if I'm not mistaken, and so I think there's a lot of things in there for businesses. And you got to remember, I think it was Napoleon who first said the UK is a nation of shopkeepers. So we have a lot of people who own their own business. So I think anything that incentivizes businesses and people who own businesses can really only be a positive. Obviously, on the personal tax side, that's maybe a little bit different with the higher rate limit that they talked about. But I think you got to remember that if somebody's running a business, you need to have an incentive to do that. And if you look at governments over recent times, they've systematically taken away loopholes. They've increased tax rates. And, when you look at all that, without being political, that disincentivizes somebody to try, and run a business. When you overlay on top of that, all of the recent, economics, obviously, some people would argue there's still a post-Brexit hangover. Obviously, we had COVID and the effects of that, and the support that the government gave everybody through COVID. Looking at what happened in Russia has increased energy prices. Inflation in turn has gone up. The currency is weakened. But it's hard to look at the UK in isolation. I think the challenge is there's a lot of sensationalism in the media, and for me anyway, and I think that reduces consumer confidence. And For me, when you look at economics or any economy, I think confidence plays a big part. And I think things like that in isolation, looking at the UK, reduces people's confidence. But for me, it's interesting to kind of think, how does it compare to other countries? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they kind of reversed a lot of things that happened only a couple of months ago, which I thought was quite interesting. But I do agree that for small business owners, this budget is a lot better than for other people. I mean, with the dividends getting a lot better, corporation taxes, like you say, they're not doing the 20 up to 25% and stuff. They reversed that. So I definitely agree with that side. I was more going on the fact like the people who have a job, have a family, the ones that are there, the reductions in the tax for them probably are only going to add up to a couple of £100 in the year, right? Whereas what you're seeing is their bills are going up hundreds in a month. So it's not tallying when you do it from that perspective. In my opinion, I agree that there are people who have massively benefited from, as there will always be. There will always be people who benefit more than others. That's the nature of any budget. It's not, you can't get a be all and end all that encompasses everyone and makes everyone happy.
Yeah, I guess you got to go back to the chancellor's statement, right? And so he said the growth plan 2022 makes the government's central economic mission, settling a target reaching 2.5 trend rate. Sustainable growth will lead to higher wages, greater opportunities, provide sustainable funding for public services. And he goes on to say that we face periods of high inflation and energy prices. And they're saying that it will increase and expand the supply side. So I guess if you go back to the premise that there are a lot of small businesses, then I guess maybe what they're trying to do, again, not being political, that, they're trying to increase that supply side. And when you look at tax rates, across, different geographies, I think it's fair to say that the UK has one of the highest, tax rates, whether it's income tax, corporation tax. So we do have relatively high tax rates.
It's always hard. It's always hard to say things like that, because you could argue that, but then you could argue, but we do have things like the NHS, which the government have to pay for. Obviously, that is something that not a lot of countries, not every country has free healthcare. Look at the US, for example. So when you compare US tax to UK tax, you've got to also bear in mind there are things that are provided that aren't necessarily provided in other countries.
Yeah. No, that's a fair comment. That's a fair comment.
To be honest, what I found, like, when you look at it, and in that he talks about growth quite a lot and trying to grow the economy, trying to make sure that he's staying at 2.5%, which is why that they've reduced tax. They're trying to encourage the spending. But then when you look at the Bank of England, what the Bank of England doing are increasing interest rates to try and reduce spending and try and encourage people to save. So you have the government telling you to spend, and then you have different part of the government telling you to save. And so in effect, they're kind of cancelling each other out and doing neither, which
it kind of comes back to what I said before, though, right? In my opinion, everybody has a different perspective and a different advantage, right? I was reading an article in the Financial Times, and it was saying that investors and investment analysts, their initial thought was that this was positive, and if anything, maybe they needed to go further. So I think it does depend on who's making the statement and what their perspective is. I mean, for me, again, if I kind of boil it down, in a way, I kind of think you got to worry about the things that you can control. And a lot of these things are out of anybody's individual control. And when you look across any market, any period of time, millionaires are created in every economy. So at the end of the day, I think that if you're a business owner in particular, you've got to focus, probably even more so now, on the fundamentals of running your business well and making sure that you have those controls in place, that you start by focusing on your customer. You then make sure that you have efficient processes, efficient buying mechanisms, and so on to make sure that control everything within that so that you're optimizing and maximizing your profit. Then you got to be selective about your investments. We've gone through a period of time where we've had very cheap cash, which kind of skews you one way. But our interest rates, even where they are now, is still below the U.S. currently, and I think, and so there are different dynamics. But if you're a business owner, you just got to keep your head down and focus on your customers and doing everything as well as you can, so that you're driving that profit, continuing to retain the cash, and being selective about your investments. I mean, I don't know. I think in some ways it's important, in some ways it's good. And at the end of the day, we're all betting that the government's right. We need them to be right. The world needs every government to be right. But on an individual basis, all we can do is keep striving. And I come back to consumer confidence. I think that's an underrated metric. For me, I think it's really about consumer confidence. And I don't see enough references to consumer confidence in the media. In fact, when I look at the news, I think you could argue that they're actually kind of scaring people, because, as I was saying, you got to focus on what you can really control. And I think the main people who look at the consumer confidence is a place called the Conference Board, right? And I want to read kind of some stuff from them. And I try and look at them from time to time when I'm looking at economics and what's going on in the marketplaces and stuff like that. I like this one site called Trading Economics, which is really good for me. And I also like the Conference Board. And they have a number of indexes that they look at, but it all filters around confidence. And here's what they had to say. Consumer confidence fell for the third consecutive month in July, said Lynn Franco, Senior Director of Economic Indicators at the Conference Board. The decrease was driven primarily by a decline in the Present Situation Index, a sign of growth that has slowed at the start of Q3. The Expectations Index held relatively steady, but remained well below a reading of 80, suggesting recession risk persists. Concerns about inflation, rising gas, food prices, and in particular, continue to weigh on consumers. If you go on and read, what it basically is saying is that people aren't spending because they don't have confidence. They don't think tomorrow is going to be better than today or yesterday. And if you look at their chart over time, what's interesting is that in actual fact, people's expectations during COVID was actually better than what the reality was. The index is flipped. And so for me, it kind of comes down to confidence. I think a lot of times we don't put enough weight in confidence. And like I said, I think on an individual basis, you got to focus on what you can do. If you run a business, you got to focus on running it as best you can, focus on your customers, and kind of keep the noise out of your head, because millionaires are created in every market, like I said before. But anyways, that's my thought. What do you think?
Well, I agree that consumer confidence is criminally undervalued in general, really. I agree with me, but I think more so wider than the media, it's not valued enough. Because I remember when I've touched on economics in when I've studied, it's been made very clear to me that consumer confidence is largely what drives whatever we see. There are other factors that you can change, like you can increase or decrease interest rates, you can try and do this, that, and the other. But ultimately, what all of those are trying to do is change customer confidence. That's kind of what the whole goal is. So I think it's a very important part of the overall thing that is criminally ignored, or undervalued by, especially like you said, the media, who do love to add a frenzy to things, as everyone knows. But and on your point with with it being lower now than it was in things like COVID, I'm actually not too surprised. If you think about what was going on in COVID, there was a lot. The government did a good job helping out companies and individuals. There was a lot of different grants and stuff that were offered to many different people, which gave them that comfort that there was money there for them, and it wasn't. Whereas now, what you're looking at is people quite simply are looking at it and saying, I can't afford rent, I can't afford food, I can't afford whatever it is that is the least important to them in terms of, or the most flexible, or the most pressured, or whatever the main thing that's driving them. That's kind of what we're seeing, that they do, that is very much being more pressurized than it ever was in COVID, because in COVID, what the government did really helped cover those bases. Whereas going back to this budget, and like I was saying right at the beginning of this, what surprised me is how little this budget is really addressing what seems to be the key issues it's meant to be addressing, in my opinion. Others will have different opinions, and like you say, depending on kind of your walk of life, your views, where you are financially, your whole thing will change. If you're a small business owner, you'll be sitting there probably saying, well, actually this budget isn't too bad. But overall, that's really where I kind of see things in general over why the customer confidence isn't there.
I was going to say, maybe this is a good opportunity to invite people to kind of comment and say what you think, or get in touch, right? Give you a call and have a meeting, schedule a meeting, and let's have a conversation. Let's continue the conversation, somewhere, offline. I think we've made the main points, that or at least I've made the main points that I want to. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to kind of add.
I guess the only other real big thing that was announced in this budget was the stamp duty for properties, right? Which
no, that is an interesting one. What do you think about that?
I think that it will mostly benefit people looking to buy second homes, because as great as it is to get rid of stamp duty, what you tend to see when stamp duty was kind of gotten rid of initially is it drove house prices up because everyone wanted to buy property. So by doing this stamp duty, again, what you're going to see is most likely, in my opinion, an increase in the property prices that then will make it so the people who are actually benefiting most from this would more likely be, it is good for first-time owners. It does help them out an awful lot. But the other people who I think will be significantly helped by this, other people looking to buy like maybe a second home or a holiday home or a rental property or anything like that. So again, because obviously it's a lot cheaper for them than it was before the stamp duty increases.
Sure. I guess so that it would also kind of depend on the loan to value, what's happened to the value of your property, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was reading something on that, that was from well, I'll just kind of read it. So 41% of mortgage deals or offers were withdrawn between Friday and today, which at that time was the 29th of September. A total of 1,621 residential mortgage products had been withdrawn, leaving 2,340 on sale today. So, it hasn't initially, I think what I was reading and what I've heard is that there's a lot of mortgage lenders who are kind of pulling out of the market. They want to readdress their pricing. They want to figure out their play as they go in. And I think governments often see property and house building and house buying as a leading indicator of confidence in the marketplace. So I guess, from my perspective, if it does stimulate, a consumption, or or supports the supply, as they kind of put it, the supply side of those elements, then it's probably, I guess I can see their logic. But again, time will tell whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah,
And I come back to what I said, as an accountant, look, the number went down. So that's a positive thing from an accountant's perspective for a client who is in the situation of doing that particular transaction. So, I guess on an individual basis, again, like you said, and we keep coming back to, depends on your personal circumstances, but on an individual level, for me, keep your head down, keep going, get rid of the noise, focus on what you can do. And if you want to kind of balance it out, start reading about what's going on in other countries, and just realize we're all in it together, and, the more that we realize that we're in it together, we have to kind of continue to work together. We got to continue to try and do the best for our clients. We got to continue to do the best for our suppliers, for our staff, for everybody. If everybody kind of just, I think in vogue at the moment is to be kind of kind. And I think that's probably right, if you think about it. And because it's really easy to let all these things get on top of you, and so on. But yeah, I think, you're right. That was kind of missed. And I think that's a good point, as is, you alluded to it, but there was some things done around energy, energy capping, energy recovery, and stuff like that. And all of those are good things. They're trying to do the right thing. You've got a lot of stakeholders or actors on the stage who are making comments from a lot of different perspectives. I think the lack of a U.S. trade deal, probably had a big negative effect, but it's hardly surprising, given Biden's, ties or apparent ties to, Ireland, and his interest in that part of Brexit, and so on. And all these things are at an individual level, we can't do anything about them. So all we can do is wake up, work hard, try and do the best for our clients, try and do the best for our suppliers. And when it comes to running our business, let's just run it the best that we can. Let's make sure that we optimize our sales, make sure we understand our leads, optimize our sales, make sure that we have those right controls in place, that we then optimize our profit, make sure that our profits turn to cash, and that once we got the cash, we're making wise investments given all these dynamics. And if that affords you the opportunity, coming back to the property, to buy a property because stamp duty is lower, and in your particular situation, that's an investment that you feel bullish about, then that's the right decision for you, and you're optimizing what it is. I don't know. That's my view.
No, I completely agree. I think you're absolutely right. The only other thing I would maybe add is, on the other side, looking at where you can be more efficient, where you can do the same thing at the same standard, but managing to do it more efficiently, and trying to cut the cost that side as well. Because
right.
As you often remind me, it's a very simple equation, the profit equation, and you can only change one or two things. So
that's right. Sales minus cost equals profit. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
Right? And and look to partner with people, right? Look to partner, look to outsource. Use someone like my controller to be your finance function. Remember, the best companies in the world, they count on their accountants to help them drive profit and cash. That's what they count on. So, and never more so than when times are tough. So, I think for me, that's an important thing to remember, is
absolutely
seek the help out. I think, you probably should tell people, but from my perspective, I think my controller has, set of guidance notes that can help the people understand the mini budget, and other things. And, maybe this is a good opportunity to invest, to invite them to give you a call. You can meet up with them, and,
Absolutely. And we also have the Pathway to Profit, where people can go through. It's a workbook that they can do, which helps them to know the areas to focus on, to help them think about their business a bit more. because so often a large problem for people is that they just don't know when to switch their hats and go to their owner and start thinking about their business in a more holistic. They're kind of always down in the dirt grind trying to work through it. So we have a course called Pathway to Profit, which is designed to help people kind of think about their business in a more overall way and help them to ultimately drive profit, cash, and value. But thank you so much for the conversation, and I hope
I enjoy it. Let's do this on a regular basis. Why don't we start making? I'm happy to take part every week. As long as it makes sense, and we'll keep going. And if I'm ever crowding the space, you just push me out. But as long as you want to have a chat, I'm always here.
It's always a pleasure to have you. So thank you for joining again. And as we said earlier, if anyone who's watching, if you have any opinions or any thoughts about the budget or how you think or certain areas that you want to highlight, please let us know. We're always interested to hear anyone else's opinions. And as always, if you can like, share, and comment, that'd be much appreciated. And thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, just remember, keep it kind. All right.
So, after we recorded this, the government made an announcement about the amendment to the 45% tax position. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on what this means and if this changes anything.
I think by and large, there's a lot of analysis about the numbers. And indeed, I know that you have guidance notes on the budget and everything that went out. And I think when I remember our conversation and what we were talking about a lot of different stakeholders having a lot of different perspectives, and the fact that the government was under a lot of pressure. And I think this reflects this. If you look at the headlines, a lot of the articles that I'm reading are calling it a 45p U-turn. The original plan, just to kind of re-embed it, the original plan was that the additional rate of 45% was going to be scrapped from April 23. On Sunday, the Prime Minister was on the BBC and actually saying that was going to go ahead. And then Monday morning, we saw the Chancellor again on the BBC announcing the U-turn. And he admitted that it's been, in his words, a tough 24 hours. And I think that I would say the same thing. There's a lot of other articles that are talking about confidence in the government. And I even read one article that said this is the beginning of the end for them, which is a little bit sad because it's the beginning. I read one where I read that the polls for Labor was up 20%, I believe. And so, but again, I come back to what I said before, is I think that really, if you're a business owner, this is frankly all noise. So you got to focus down on what you can control. And there's a lot of pressures on the business. Costs are going up. Your staff are having challenges. You want to look after them. Your clients are having challenges. You want to look after them. Your suppliers are having challenges. But I really do believe that if people think a little bit more community, but really kind of focus on doing the right thing with the clients first, and then from running your business, you continue to focus on profit, make sure that you're generating cash to the best of your ability, recognizing that this is a different market with a different market conditions. I don't think that my message would be different. I mean, obviously we can analyze the numbers, we can have a say, but yeah, I mean, for me, I think that I think a lot of what we said still holds, or I would hope so. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think the changes don't change what people have to do, as you said. Ultimately, the factors that you can change are the ones that you should focus on, as you said. And if someone is worried about this change, they can always talk to an advisor. Us at My Controller would always be willing to help. But ultimately, I don't think it's something that people should get too hung up on, because it's ultimately out of their control. Is what it is, and so they should just focus on the areas that they can improve their business and improve their cash flow.
Great, I agree. So again, I would just thank people for watching. Let's have your comments. Get in touch with Greg. I'm sure he'd love to meet you. You know, worst case, you're going to have a cup of coffee, right? So thanks for watching, you know, from me.
And thank you for taking time out for this amendment.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.